Alright, so it's been a while since I've made a new video. Frankly, I just kind of needed some time to step away from making content and just do some other fun stuff that I've been wanting to do outside of YouTube. One of those things that I've been doing is playing games, and specifically, I've been playing a lot of Starfield. So far, I've put a little over 80 hours into Starfield across both Steam and Xbox.
Get alive!
I have personally really liked the game. I had fun with it. But one thing I really didn't like about Starfield was its opening. You know, it's that part in the game where you start off maybe with a tutorial mission, or it starts you off in a dungeon where you learn the basic mechanics and the plot of the game. So yeah, Starfield's opening. I wasn't a fan. And it got me thinking about past Bethesda titles and their openings and how they sort of approached the introductory period of an open world RPG. So since everybody likes a good ranking video on YouTube now, I decided to rank every single main Bethesda RPG based solely on its opening. But first, before we get started, I'll be right back. Just gonna put you right there. Right there. There you go. Now, I know Bethesda didn't technically develop Fallout New Vegas, but I do think the general public kind of associates that game with Bethesda anyway, and for me, it really sets the standard as far as what a good video game opening is. Now, a lot of people have gone into great detail on why Fallout New Vegas's opening is so solid, but basically it boils down to this. Right away, the game starts off with this cool cinematic establishing the setting and giving you a really easy to understand motivation as the main character. Some dude in a suit wanted whatever it was that you were holding, and he shoots you and leaves you for dead. Okay, cool, simple revenge motivation established. After that cinematic is over, you're kind of shoved right into the game, being able to quickly make your character, establish your stats and your skill points and that sort of thing. And if you're a first-time player, after you create your character, the game gives you a really easy to follow sort of introductory quest line. And what's really nice about these sort of starting quests is that, you know, as a new player, it does a really good job at tying everything together and sort of guiding you on your way to start the main game. But if you're completely familiar with Fallout New Vegas already and you're on like a multiple playthrough already, you can just create your character, leave Doc Mitchell's house, and just go wherever you want. You can beeline it in any direction.
I'm out of here.
The opening allows you to get in the game quickly if you wish, but it gives you the opportunity to learn how the game works, and the setting is done really well and gets you interested in actually playing the game. And that's why New Vegas's opening to me is S tier. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's rank some Bethesda games, and we might as well just start with Bethesda's first big RPG, and that's what initially was intended to be a battle arena style game, hence the name. It eventually turned into the big open world RPG that it is today. If you're interested in checking it out for yourself, it is in fact free to play on Steam. Although, I gotta warn ya, firing up today, it's a little rough. A lot of the stuff in this game basically laid the foundation for future Elder Scrolls titles, and it shows. You start the game creating your character, choosing your race, creating your class, distributing your skill points as you see fit, all that good stuff. Now, the game has this sort of old school Ultima-esque interface, and honestly, this is kind of where things immediately fall off the rails, at least for me. It's got this really quirky control scheme where you move by clicking the edges of the screen, but for combat, you are holding down the right click on the mouse button and moving your mouse around like as if you're swinging a sword. I couldn't even bear to get past the first introductory level just because of this mechanic itself. So all of the gameplay footage that you're going to be seeing in this video is from... I'll be sure to leave a link in the description down below so you can check out their long play. It's definitely worth watching. So even though I couldn't play it, let's talk about this game's opening.
What the f*** is this piece of
Emperor Uriel Septim VII was betrayed and imprisoned in another dimension by the sorcerer Jaegar Tharn. At least I think his name is Jaegar. J-A-G-A-R. Jaegar. I'm going to call him Jaegar. Basically, the sorcerer trapped Uriel Septim in another dimension, taking on his identity to take the throne for himself. After the game gives you this little bit of lore, you then create your character, choose your skills, your race, all of that good stuff in the typical Bethesda fashion. Though I will say, creating your class and setting your skills and all that stuff is a lot more in depth and has a lot lot more options than what you might get from more modern Bethesda RPGs. And just like many other future Bethesda titles, you start off this one as a prisoner. Left to die in your cell, you are contacted by the apparition of Rhea Silmain. She's an old apprentice of Yegartharn who claims to be dead, and she needs you to escape the Imperial prison, escape the sewers, and reach a shift gate, which is a portal that will lead you to safety. If you want to just escape the sewers and be done with it, you just need to follow Rhea's kind of general instructions. Go west and turn south. You do this enough times down a handful of corridors, just going west and then turning south. You'll go in these directions multiple times down various corridors, fighting off rats, goblins, and lizard persons. Do this enough times and you'll reach the shift gate, which will take you to a random city in the Providence where your created character is from. Kind of a cool little detail. And yeah, that's it. Once you reach the shift gate successfully, you're free to roam about the cabin. After leveling up for the first time, Rhea will revisit you in your sleep and sort of give you a little bit more information on the, albeit basic, plot. She tells you that in order to free the Emperor from his imprisonment, you need to find all 8 pieces of the Staff of Chaos. And while she doesn't know where all the pieces are located, and nor do you get any real specific information, she does suggest that you start your search at Fang Lair. Again, you're just sort of left to your own devices. You just are told that Fang Lair is where you should probably start your search, and yeah, it's up to you to search around and hunt for clues and where to find these 8 pieces of the staff. For better or worse, Arena is just one of those old school RPGs that is really hands-off and lets you succeed or fail on your own. I'm a big fan of this hands-off approach. It's just a shame that I can't play the game due to all of this nastiness. It's just too outdated and too clunky for me to even really get into. So with all that being taken into consideration, I'm going to give Arena's opening a C. If the interface and the control scheme were just a little bit better, I could possibly give this thing a B, but yep, a C is where it stands. All right, so I'm not going to do this entire video in sequential order based on release date, but let's go ahead and talk about the second installment of the Elder Scrolls series. Daggerfall just basically took a lot of the aspects of Arena and improved upon them or made them bigger. Starting the game is very similar to the first installment. You choose your providence, create your class, assign your skill points, create your background, all that good stuff. Once that's done, you get that wonderful old school campy FMV cutscene. What you learn in this cutscene is that one of the Emperor's old king buddies who fell in battle is now haunting his kingdom of Daggerfall. Your job is to investigate why this is happening and to put a stop to it. After that little cutscene's over, you find yourself shipwrecked and stuck in a cave, and oh my god, what, not this again?
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Okay, look, just like Arena, Daggerfall is available to download free on Steam. However, before you start playing the game, there is this mod called Daggerfall Unity, which, in my opinion, is basically the only real way to play this game. The mod basically allows you to play without the real clunky old school mechanics and gives you a much more familiar modern control scheme. And as a cool little bonus, the mod also allows you to play this with shorter dungeons, which is quite a nice little quality of life feature, especially if you're playing on multiple playthroughs. Anyways, in this opening dungeon that you find yourself stranded in, it actually gives you a pretty decent tutorial. Learning the mechanics of the game, you'll go through the dungeon fighting a various of different enemies, from rats to imps, bandits, and grizzly bears for some reason. You also might run into a skeleton or two, which, quite frankly, has probably the most horrifying screech I've ever heard in all of video games. Ugh. Still gives me nightmares. The cavern itself, again, isn't very hard to navigate through, and you'll get a decent amount of loot as you explore through the dungeon. After leaving this opening dungeon, you are now greeted with a large, vast, open landscape to basically go do whatever the hell you want. The game does try to nudge you in the direction of the main quest with a couple little extra pop-up tutorials, but from this point, you can do whatever you want. Now, this opening is very similar to that of Arena's, although I will say that I find the opening area is easier to navigate, and the opening dungeon does seem to be a little bit quicker to get through for experienced players. And the fact that you can play this with a more modern control scheme now is a huge boon. If the Unity mod wasn't completely necessary to enjoy this game with a more modern control scheme, I would probably give this opening an A. But it wouldn't be fair to judge this game solely based on my experience with the mod. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give Daggerfall's opening a B. Alright, let's talk about Fallout 3. Fallout 3 to me is one of those games that when you play it for the very first time, it's awesome. But oh boy, when you play it on a third, fourth, or fifth playthrough, it gets old quick.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
The game really starts to feel like I have to do chores before I can enjoy the game. Like many others, Fallout 3 was my first introduction to the Fallout universe. And I gotta say, playing Fallout 3 for the first time was a superb experience. I still remember what it was like when I saw that opening cinematic for the first time, that really dramatic pan out from the tattered subway where you see the landscape of the destroyed Washington, D.C. setting. It was just so tense and so awesome. And then you get that lovely, lovely Ron Perlman War Never Changes monologue.
I like it a lot.
For the character creation process, you're literally born into the game. Once you determine what your future self will look like, your mom dies, and then you get a taste of what it's like growing up in the mysterious Vault 101. A vault that, once sealed, is never meant to be opened again. During these coming-of-age years in the vault, it's a bit slow-moving. That being said, credit where it's due, I do think that even with its slow-paced nature, the game does an excellent job at really feeling immersive, especially for first-time players, and just does a really good job at giving you that sort of slice-of-life experience growing up in the vault. During your 10th birthday, as an example, you get to meet a lot of the vault residents, and it really gives you this feeling of being in a small, tight community underground. You're introduced to your best friend, your childhood bully, and the overseer, who immediately starts giving off big bad guy vibes. During the party, you sneak away with your dad so he can give you your birthday gift, a BB gun. It's here where the game introduces you to the shooting mechanics and, frankly, just how bad they are, and it teaches you how you'll want to just use VATS for everything. Now, one thing that I've always personally liked about Fallout 3's opening is that with the characters that you meet, it does a really good job at making you either like them or hate them. It just actually makes you care about them in some way, either good or bad. I mean, as an example, with this whole BB gun segment, I don't know if it's Liam Neeson's voice acting or something, but it really does a good job at painting my dad character as this really altruistic person, this guy who really can't do anything wrong. And again, with this whole coming of age portion of the opening, I think that with its slow-paced nature and with its heavy sense of immersion, it does a better job at sort of establishing your feelings towards different characters of the game. I mean, I remember first time playing through this game, and when I hit that BB segment, I accidentally told my dad that I didn't like the gift, and he sounded so sad, and I really regretted it, and I had to restart the whole game over because I hadn't saved yet, and yeah. It's just, they do really good jobs at making you care about the characters. Anyways, fast forward to the age of 16, and you are now ready to take the GOAT exam. This is just sort of an immersive way to apply bonus points to your stat sheet. Once you get the GOAT exam out of the way, we fast forward to age 18, where we can finally get into some actual active gameplay. Your friend Amata wakes you up in a panic, telling you that your dad has gone missing and has fled the vault, and as a result, the Overseer is now gone in complete lockdown mode and is now hunting you down. In addition, a rad roach infestation has occurred, causing just a whole slew of panic amongst the vault. During your escape, you'll fight some rad roaches along with some security guards. You'll also find the option to potentially save Butch's mom from a swarm of rad roaches, as well as find Amata and save her from an interrogation from her father. The cool thing about these little encounters is, one, they're completely optional, but they also are a way for the game to basically show you that your choices or lack of choices have their own consequences, even if they're just really small. For example, if you save Butch's mom from the rad roaches, he'll give you his tunnel snakes jacket. And if you decide to refuse to help him, he will go seeking the attention of a guard to try and help his mom, which will then end up ratting you out, and the guards will start attacking you. With Amata, you can rescue her from her interrogation, and whether or not you decide to kill her father has its own set of consequences later in the game. Something that's cool that I just recently learned is that that gun that she gives you during the beginning of this escape, if you decide to let her keep that, she will hold on to it and then use it to rescue herself from the interrogation. Just little things like that really just make the game feel much more immersive. Eventually, you reach the vault door and you get one last chance to make any final changes to your character. Once you exit the vault, boom, you get this big Bethesda reveal of this desolated post-apocalyptic hellscape. And yeah, it's here once you exit the vault that all the training wheels come off. You're free to do whatever you wish. For first-time players, especially those completely new to the Fallout universe, I think this opening does a great job at sort of setting the scene and getting you to feel really immersed into what this world is like. I remember when I first played this game, after leaving the vault, I was really attached to both Amata and my dad, and I just wondered if I would ever see them again later on in the game. However, after several playthroughs of this game, I couldn't give two shits about these people. My god, does this opening start to feel super stretched out. There's no fast forwarding through this opening sequence, and every time you want to start a new game, you just have to go through the slow and monotonous process of going through puberty in the vault every single time. Now, when we look at something like Skyrim, for example, that opening does also seem to be a little bit long. However, the big difference between something like Skyrim and Fallout 3 is that while Skyrim's opening may be a little bit lengthy, it's a lot more engaging and doesn't feel nearly as sluggish as the opening of Fallout 3. While I loved playing Fallout 3 for the first time as a new player, playing this game at all multiple times, yeah, no, it just feels like I'm trudging through just to try to get to the good stuff. And for that reason, Fallout 3's opening gets a C.
Hey, you're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right?
Okay, now let's talk about Skyrim. If I were ranking these openings based solely on the first playthrough experience, Skyrim would be an easy S tier. The game starts with this somber and tense feeling as you're riding through a prisoner's cart through the town of Helgen, listening to the chatter of the onlooking citizens as you ride by. While riding in the cart, you get introduced to the main side plot of the game by being introduced to Ulfric Stormcloak, the leader of the Nordic Rebellion. Seemingly through no fault of your own, you are now mixed up in all this mess, and as soon as you step off the cart and create your character, you wait your turn in line for the chopping block. Tension slowly builds as you're waiting your turn to be executed, and then BAM! Thomas the Tank, it's dragon. When attempting to escape, you take either the red pill or the blue pill to go through the introductory dungeon. You'll fight your way through soldiers, spiders, and oh, look at that, even another bear. Eventually, you'll get to this cave opening, which is the exit of the introductory dungeon, and that's where you get that traditional big Bethesda reveal. Look, I remember when Skyrim first came out, and it's probably the most monumental midnight release that I've personally ever experienced. Everybody showed up dressed in their Elder Scrolls themed cosplay, waiting in line for this game. It was truly an awesome experience. I remember rushing home to play this thing as soon as I could, and as soon as I got through that introductory dungeon and you get that big reveal and see all the trees and the water of Skyrim, it was such an awesome experience, and it's one of those things I just still remember today. If you're a new player, the game does a good job at sort of guiding you to the first main town to start the main quest line, but if you're an experienced player, just from leaving that cave, you can just go do whatever the hell you want. As far as narrative and presentation goes, even on multiple playthroughs, I think the opening is pretty solid. It kind of suffers from that Fallout 3-like experience where it is just a little longer than I would like it to be. The alternate start mod is absolutely a necessity for me at this point when playing Skyrim, because I can only sit in that opening unskippable cart ride so many times. But again, as an opening, I think it's pretty solid. There's a lot of spectacle, the story is interesting and engaging, there's a lot of action going on, so you're not just sitting there for too long doing nothing. And I think overall, as far as tutorials go in the opening section, I think the game does a really good job at sort of introducing you to a lot of the mechanics and aspects of the game, and does a good job at helping you get the hang of things if you're a brand new player. Really just the sheer length of the opening is what kind of holds it back for me, so for that reason, I'll give it a B.
The cure. You found it.
Let him die. I'm keeping it.
You're going to sell it, aren't you, bastard?
Here's a fun fact. The hype for Fallout 4 was what caused me to build my first gaming PC. Not really relevant info for this type of video, but I digress. With Fallout 4, I think Bethesda really improved upon a lot of the gripes that I personally had with Fallout 3's opening. Fallout 4 starts with this really awesome opening cinematic. It's sort of this live-action hybrid that sets the tone, but also gives you a glimpse into what pre-war Fallout universe looked like. And of course, it wouldn't be a Fallout game without having the War Never Changes monologue, but instead, this time around, it's not done by Ron Perlman. It's actually done by Brian T. Delaney, the main voice actor of the male protagonist in Fallout 4. And yeah, I gotta be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of this decision. I think Brian did an excellent job at delivering the monologue, but I was just admittedly disappointed that Ron Perlman was just delegated to a smaller, lesser role. And personally, just as a side note, I was never really a fan of the fact that Fallout 4's protagonist was, in fact, voiced. I think, personally, that just kind of sort of took me out of the immersion of playing as the Lone Wanderer. The performances were fine, but just in that type of RPG, I want to read the lines in my head the way I would say them, and when you add a voice to that, it takes away even just at least a little bit of immersion from you. And So I admit that that might just be a me thing, and others may really like it, but for Fallout games, I just don't really like to have a voice protagonist. Anyways, with that monologue out of the way, you get to then create your character's appearance with an albeit pretty in-depth character creation system compared to past Bethesda titles. After you're satisfied with how your character looks, you then go through this little portion of just living a little slice of life in the pre-nuclear world. You'll get some coffee from your robot butler, go walk around your house, talk to your spouse, look at that blouse, and then the doorbell rings. It's someone from Vault Tech who wants you to fill out some paperwork so that you can gain entrance into your neighborhood vault. This is the point where you will name your character and fill out your special stat sheet. Once that's done, the salesman leaves, and fortunately for you, you filled out your paperwork just in time because, yep, looks like the bombs are dropping now and it's time to rush your way to your newly accessible vault. Rush your way over to the vault, and once inside, you put on a vault jumpsuit and get shoved into a little cryo tube. After that, most of you know what happens next. Some bald guy shows up, takes your baby, shoots your spouse, and then leaves you back in the cryotube to go back to sleep. You wake up a second time and then now try to escape the vault. You'll come across a melee weapon and a gun fighting various rad roaches. You eventually stumble upon a Pip-Boy still attached to a skeleton, and you use that to escape the vault. Once you exit the vault, you get that traditional big Bethesda reveal. And yeah, technically here you can just go and explore and do whatever you want. It's funny, initially I always really didn't like Fallout 4's opening because of the fact that I always thought that you had to interact with Codsworth and then deal with the Preston Garvey intro quest line before you could actually get into the game. It turns out the game just does a really good job at sort of funneling you into those little main quests that, yeah, you actually don't have to do those. Those are technically completely optional if you want. Overall, Fallout 4's opening, I think, follows the pretty much same formula that Fallout 3 does, except those segments are just a lot shorter. You get the War Never Changes monologue, you get the little slice of life experience, you get the vault escape and the rad roaches, and then you get the big reveal. And you know what? My biggest issue with Fallout 3 was the fact that that little slice of life coming of age portion was just too damn long. So that was a huge point in Fallout 4's favor. The one big thing that Fallout 4 I think does worse than Fallout 3, and you know what, this just might be a symptom of that opening being a lot shorter, I don't care about that main plot at all. I never felt any sort of immediate urge to avenge my wife or try to find my scary looking baby. I just didn't care. I don't know if it's because of the game's writing or if it just didn't give me enough time to develop any sort of interest in these characters, but yeah, the main plot, I don't care about it at all. With that being said, though, I still do think that Fallout 4 is, in fact, a better opening than Fallout 3. So, because of that, I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. My back! Now let's talk about the first Bethesda game that I ever played, and that's Morrowind. Morrowind is one of those quintessential core memory games for me. It's one of those games where I still remember to this day what it was like experiencing this very unique game for the first time. Starting the game, we get a little exposition narrated by the mad god Azura. By the way, I don't know if this was done intentionally or if this was a situation dealing with bitrate limitations or even just simply poor recording technique, but this sort of distorted narration always really gave me eerie vibes, especially when paired with that like ambient sandstorm overhead. In fact, you know what? Let's just go ahead and listen to it right now.
They have taken you from the Imperial City's prison, first by carriage and now by boat. To the east, to Morrowind. Fear not, for I am watchful. You have been chosen.
I always personally really liked Morrowind's opening. I think it's very atmospheric, and I think that it does a great job at setting the game's tone. And yeah, it doesn't really waste the player's time. It lets you jump right into things if you want to. You wake up aboard a prisoner's ship. You enter your name, choose what your character is going to look like, and head inside the census office. Once in the office, you meet this lovely man.
Ah, yes, we've been expecting you.
And here's where you create your class and determine your sign. Once that's done, you need to take your release papers to the captain to get officially released. But of course, before doing that, you need to steal absolutely everything in this room. And it's actually in this room where the game sort of gives you a very general tutorial on things like accessing your inventory, weapons, assigning magic, and that sort of thing. And really, this is my only knock against Morrowind's opening. Morrowind does a great job at setting its tone and getting you into the game quickly. And this is especially great for people who have played the game multiple times. That being said, the tutorials are pretty basic, and they kind of all happen in just one section of the game. So for brand new players to this game, it could end up being a little bit overwhelming to sort of get your bearings at first. But I digress. You take your release papers to the captain, who signs off on them, but not before telling you that you have some duties that need to be fulfilled that were sent directly from the Emperor himself. You need to deliver a package to a man named Caius Casades. At least that's how I've always pronounced his name. He's an old hermit who happens to reside in Balmora. You can ask the captain for directions to Balmora and then simply step out of his office into the town of Seda Neen. Now, similar to what I've alluded to before, Bethesda RPGs always seem to have a pattern of kind of having that big first reveal after the training wheels come off. I mean, even something like Daggerfall showcasing its large landscape was kind of an impressive deal. In terms of wow factor for a big reveal, Morrowind doesn't really follow this tradition. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not inherently a bad thing. It's a great starter town. It's a great place to buy your first bit of gear, talk to people, and get some starter side quests. It's a great intro area, it just doesn't have that big wow reveal like some of the other titles had. Anyways, once you step out of Seda Neen, that's where the training wheels come off. At this point, you are free to go participate in the main quest or go explore to your heart's content. As a bonus point to this game, while it's technically not the opening portion anymore, I think the main quest does a really good job at sort of starting the player out and getting their feet wet. Once you deliver the package in Balmora, you are then simply just given some money and are told to get experiences, maybe go find a job at a guild, do some freelance work, anything that you can do in the game to basically level your character up. It's a really cool way to just sort of immerse yourself into the game, but also basically take the pressure off of you to kind of explore this open area. Now, like I said before, I think some new players might find the game to be a little intimidating, at least at first, but overall, I think the opening of Morrowind is really solid, and for me anyway, I think it definitely deserves an A. Fallout 76. Yeah, we're just going to skip that one.
Aw, gee. You sure? Okay, well, I'll be hanging around the arena grounds if you need someone to worship the ground you walk on. Bye.
Let's talk about another Elder Scrolls title. For me personally, I feel like out of all of the Elder Scrolls titles, Oblivion is probably the one that is the most underrated. Sure, its character models and the insane amounts of bloom in the game do kind of date it a bit, but the Radiant AI system in this game I think is pretty darn solid. Pair all that with some pretty interesting side quests in a very colorful and high fantasy style environment, I think that Oblivion just has a really big sense of charm about it. I just wish the opening wasn't so damn slow. Look, Bethesda always tries to make that first initial experience a really entertaining one, and they try their best to really get the player hooked and engaged with the main questline. And admittedly, when I first played this game on my 360 as a kid, I was hooked. It was awesome. To no surprise, you start off as a prisoner. You create your character, then get bullied about your choices from a dark elf. Shortly after, some bodyguards along with the Emperor himself show up at your cell. The Emperor, voiced by Patrick Stewart, is like, "Whoa, I've seen you in a dream before. Come with me and watch me die." So you do what Patrick Stewart says, and you follow him and his bodyguards, the Blades, along a sort of secret tunnel route throughout the prison. In this opening, you'll go ahead and trudge along, hoping that the bodyguards decide to pick up the pace eventually. You'll fight some assassins, and then get further separated from the group as the game tutorializes you. After learning some of the basic mechanics, you rendezvous back with the group, and the Emperor tells you, "Hey, I'm gonna die like right now, so take this amulet to a man named Joffrey." And sure enough, the Emperor's prediction was right. After you kill the Emperor's assassin, you talk to one of the Emperor's bodyguards, whose name escapes me at the moment.
My name is Jeff.
Fill out your class, and then he tells you to escape through the sewers and go fulfill the Emperor's request. So you trudge through the sewers and finally get to the end of this super long string of introductory dungeons. Once you step through the exit, you get that, say it with me now, big Bethesda reveal. Personally, I've always really liked Oblivion's big reveal, primarily because of its high fantasy and super colorful art style. Contrasting that with the dark and grimy dungeons that you start off in, it's a pretty dramatic reveal. Oblivion's opening for me gets a B, although I would be tempted to give it a C. It's about as long as Fallout 3's opening, at least with this sort of long introductory period. It's a little more engaging. I think just at least having the combat happen a little early on makes it feel a bit quicker than something like Fallout 3, where you're just forced to kind of sit there and walk around for a bit. So yeah, with that factored in, I think Oblivion gets a B. Okay, let's talk about the game that inspired this video in the first place. Starfield as a whole is a very mixed bag for a lot of people, myself included. I've put in over 80 hours into the game, I finished the main story, and about a little over half of the New Game Plus, and yeah, I had fun with it, but I do have my handful of complaints, and one of those complaints is Starfield's dreadful, dreadful opening. I really don't like this one. The game starts you off heading down a mine shaft. You're a new recruit for this mining company, and you're sent down this mine shaft to acquire some sort of artifact that an outside buyer wants you to obtain. And similar to Oblivion and Fallout 3, you go through this arduous process of slowly following around your supervisor throughout this cave, walking either too slow or too fast to keep an even pace. Anyways, you follow your supervisor around long enough where you acquire your cutter and learn how to mine minerals and use your flashlight. Credit where it's due, the character's dialogue is actually pretty decent, and I actually do enjoy the personalities of the different characters in the game. After awkwardly following your supervisor and coworker around, you then stumble upon some sketchy readings. So naturally, you are sent in alone by yourself to obtain this sketchy artifact. Once you obtain this mysterious artifact, you have the high of a lifetime and then wake up in the company's medical bay. Once you wake up here, they kind of do the whole, hey, can you confirm that everything is correct? And this is where you create your character. And honestly, it's probably my favorite character creation system that Bethesda's had yet. You create your character's appearance, choose your background, along with some bonus traits that honestly improve the overall immersion and experience of the game. After creating your character, what do you do next? That's right, you get right back on this horrible Disney ride of an opening and follow your supervisor out onto the planet's atmosphere. When you step out into this atmosphere, that's when the sort of Bethesda reveal happens. I mean, when I think about it, the reveal itself is fine. I think it's just when you're dealing with that whole sluggish buildup, it really kind of deflates the experience. Anyways, after stepping out into the atmosphere, you keep walking for a little bit longer, and you see that your buyer's ship is approaching. As it turns out, the buyer is none other than Barrett, a member of Constellation. This is the main faction that you will interact with throughout the course of the main game. You tell them about your trippy experience, and then some baddies show up, finally giving us something to do. Once that brief encounter is over, Barrett's like, hey, you can really handle yourself. You know what? Take the keys to my ship. What?
What?
The game later on tries to insinuate that Barrett is sort of this eccentric, kind of carefree guy who has done stuff like this in the past, but honestly, it just kind of comes across as a little hand-wavy to this whole thing. It's hard to suspend disbelief. Narratively speaking, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, and I really don't like how you obtain the ship in this game. But anyway, you obtain the ship, so you can now go exploring, right? No. First, you have to go to the neighboring planet where the rest of that Crimson Fleet squad is that tried to take you down earlier. Once you get there, you can either fight them all or convince them to leave, and then after doing that, the game finally lets you off its leash and lets you go exploring, right? No. Now you have to go to Alpha Centauri, where the Constellation faction is headquartered, and deliver the artifact to them. Only after you deliver the artifact to Constellation, the game finally lets you kind of go exploring and do what you want. Honestly, having to go talk to Constellation first and deliver the artifact does make a bit of sense narratively for me, but it's just, you pair that with the previous planet and then the mining planet and just like all of this slow, kind of boring buildup. By the time that you're ready to explore, you're kind of already a little gassed. Once the game lets you actually get going, then it becomes more fun. And you know what? Alpha Centauri is a great starter planet. It's got a lot of little things that you can do. It's just, again, it's that buildup. It's just really monotonous, and it's quite awful. Again, for the record, I have put over 80 hours into this game. I beat the main story, played about half of the New Game Plus, and I had fun with it. But really, the weakest part to me probably is Starfield's opening. I've had to now play this thing, I think, 4 times, and I have not wanted an alternate start mod more than I have now. Frankly, it's probably my least favorite opening of any Bethesda game. Starfield's opening gets a D. It takes way too long to get into. The introduction to the plot is quite bad. In general, the whole beginning is just kind of boring. So yeah, Starfield's opening gets a D. A big, fat D. A big, fat, girthy Okay, so I was initially just going to end the video as is, but with all of the semi-recent Starfield drama just kind of continuously circulating online, I felt like adding this was appropriate. Look, as I said before, Starfield was the inspiration for this video. I hated that opening. And it's my least favorite opening of pretty much the entire Bethesda catalog that I've played. And it frankly might be my least favorite Bethesda game that I've ever played. However, that doesn't mean I didn't have fun playing it. I enjoyed the majority of the 70 plus hours that I've put into this game. Is it the most 7 out of 10 game that I've played? Yeah, but you can still have fun with a 7 out of 10 game. I think a lot of people were just really hoping that Bethesda would knock this one out of the park, and they were just kind of really disappointed when this game met at below expectations, and the fact that everybody was so excited for this, that disappointment fueled further disappointment than what it might normally receive. I think at the end of all of this, if anything, I've just learned that Bethesda might not be the best at making a solid opening experience. And now I've officially said everything I need to say, so I'm just gonna go away now. Bye.